First podcast we did, you were a Christian.
Yep.
Second podcast we did, you were a Muslim.
Yep.
Today, are you still a Muslim?
Yes.
You are. Okay. So you talk about UK,
Yep.
right? I lived in Germany at a refugee camp. And I saw who, first time I ever got stabbed in my life was by another Afghani kid. It was in Erlangen at a refugee camp. We had a fight. Boom. He took it out. Well, I'm like,
Sounds about right.
Yeah, 11 years old when this happened to me. So you look at stats because I'm a data guy. I think you're also a data guy.
100%.
And I watched you go through it to see how you were going to maneuver around this. I was watching you very closely. I think you and I even exchanged a couple messages one time privately, you and I. I look at stats. 2023, the top name, the number one name in UK, London, is Mohammed.
Correct.
Okay. That wasn't the case when you grew up. That was not the case.
It's true.
When you look at stats, 27% of prisoners in London jail are Muslims.
Yep.
Where the population's only 6%.
That's right.
You hear the arguments about Sharia law, what they're saying. You hear your fellow who you've spoken to before, you guys have collaborated before, Tommy Robinson. He makes his arguments on what's going on with what do you call it? With
grooming
UK.
gangs.
Yeah. And then I look at some of the tweets. Here's a couple of the tweets that you had for people reacting to you because you were going strong to what was going on in UK. And you said, if you don't believe in the way the system that UK has, get out. I don't care who you are.
Correct.
You were very clear about it.
Correct.
You were very thorough about it.
Correct.
The response came back to you from the Muslim community, and it wasn't pretty. They were attacking you, right?
Yep.
And one of your response here that I have on the tweet, it says, Islam hate comes from Muslims who think they have to defend the disgusting actions that other Muslims commit instead of admitting that a religion can be perfect and people are not.
Yep.
Muslim must condemn the disgusting child rape openly and verbally, or the entire religion will be done. And then you respond back, Muslims who refuse to understand the crime Islamophobia instead of addressing the serious issue is only going to garner reassessment. These grooming gangs would not be tolerated in an Islamic country. It's time for Muslims to stand up against all. And then there's more of these that I can read.
Yep.
Okay. And even to go back on what happened when the comments they made about Jesus Christ, you remember that as a Muslim, you said, I will never forget these scumbags for disgracing Jesus Christ,
That's
right? So you've done both sides. But specifically to UK, a once great nation based on what you're saying.
Yep.
A once 200 years ago, the strongest men, what they produced, who they defended.
Yep.
They were not afraid of going up against the scariest people that everybody feared. They stood up and said, you're not going to do it here.
Yep.
We've seen Dunkirk. We've seen these movies. We've seen these histories. A lot of us got it from movies. Some of us got it from school. How much has your opinion changed since now you've been a Muslim now for what, 2 years? I want to say 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that. How much do you link that to the issues that UK is facing?
So the UK does have a problem where a lot of the culture is being eroded, and it's being eroded by an Islamic immigration. And this is going to make Muslims mad when I say it, but I understand why the native Brits feel threatened by that and are unhappy with that. When you talk about crime statistics, it's difficult because you can do the same thing with black people in the United States. But black people are a part of the United States. It's seen as racist to say that there are a lower percentage of the population, but they commit more of the crime. But you can do the same with black people in the United States. But black people live here, and they're always going to live here. I like to be ultra realistic about all things. And I like the idea of Britain retaining its culture and feeling like England. A lot of the stabbing that happens in the UK isn't from Muslims particularly. It's actually from Christians from Africa. A lot of it's third worlders. A lot of it's black youths inside of London who do most of the stabbing, the majority of it. So I think we have a huge disconnect here that we have to discuss. And the disconnect is third world versus first world and attaching Islam to the third world. And in some cases that is true, but there are first world Islamic nations which are much safer than any Western nation. So you have a lot of third world Christians which are coming in, committing heinous crimes. The Southport killer, he was from Rwanda, I believe he's a Christian family, and he killed 4 or 5 little girls, stabbed them to death recently. That's what caused all the riots.
Rudy Kabena, the guy from the Taylor Swift concert.
Correct.
But his father was from Rwanda, but his father had some crazy stuff. He had Al-Qaeda training.
Manual, that's right. But there's a whole bunch of Christians who are people coming from the third world which are committing crimes as well. I'll be honest with you, it's actually interesting when we attach Islam to these things. If you go to the UAE or Qatar or Bahrain, these countries have extremely strict immigration policies. They're extremely strict about Islamization and extremism and radicalization. And these countries are some of the most beautiful countries in the world to live in, and they're extremely safe. So I think the problem that we have with Europe and the UK specifically was actually summed up by somebody who knows the problem better than I, and it was the UAE foreign minister. Did you ever see what he said?
Yes.
The UAE foreign minister. Find his video where he talks about the Islamization of Western nations. And he's saying that you're allowing extremism to foster in your countries because you think you know Islam better than we do. And we don't allow these ideologies in our own Islamic nations, and you're allowing them in the West. And you think
It is right there.
Let's play this video.
There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of the lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance. There will come a day.
What was interesting about that interview, if you saw the very beginning of the clip, the whole interview was actually in Arabic. And he was going to say that, and he goes, no, I'm actually going to say this in English.
Yeah, that's right.
And she's like, no, it's okay, we'll translate. He goes, no,
yeah,
I want to say this in English.
Yeah, so...
What do you think about that message?
Well, you could say he's not a real Muslim. I guess that's what the Muslims of Great Britain would do, because they said that to me when I said that any Muslim who is not outraged by the crimes committed by Muslims is part of the problem. And this is the identity politics problem, right? We had this with blacks and George Floyd, et cetera, and all these things, and BLM. If a black person commits crime, then black people should stand up and say, I don't care if he's black, he committed a crime. Yep. But when you have people who rally around somebody purely because of their religion or the color of the skin, irregardless of their actions, that's how you foster hate. If you want to give racists what they want, and I'm part black, part white, if you want to make white people hate black people, all that takes is for black people to defend a black person who breaks the law. Now they're like, well, all you black people are a problem because this guy was a criminal and you're sticking up for him. So what I was saying is that the Muslims who complain that Islam is hated in the West, they're making it worse by sticking up for grooming gangs and serial murderers. I don't care what race or religion you are. If you're killing little girls, you're a scumbag. And in an Islamic nation, you would face the death penalty. So I don't care if it doesn't make me a real Muslim for that. I don't care. But I will be honest. I'll be very honest. What he said is extremely interesting. Because when I say these things online, I get no pushback and no hate from the Gulf Arabs. I get no pushback and no hate from the first world Muslims. None of that. It's only from the extremists. And the extremists are all living in Bradford. They're all living in the UK. It's really interesting that the most extreme points of view I get for the things I say about Islam are from England. It's never from the Islamic or the Arabic world. I saw another really interesting thing, actually. I'd like someone to find it. It was a post I saw on Twitter from a Pakistani guy. And he said, I'm from Pakistan. I live in Islamabad. And I was recently in Birmingham. And it felt more Islamic. And it was more backward thinking than anything you would see in Pakistan. He said, Islamabad is a far more liberal place to live than Birmingham, UK. He's saying the Pakistanis who are still in Islamabad are less Islamic and less extreme about things than those inside of Birmingham, UK. So you can have a conversation about all of these things. It's a long and detailed conversation. It'll get me in a lot of trouble. And as I'm only 2.5 years into Islam, I don't know all of the ins and outs. There's other people who know it better than me. What I will say is that I believe every country and every race, every identity has a right to their land. I believe that. I believe that the British people have a right to have an England for British people that feels like England. You can argue what a British person is. Perhaps the definition may be slightly changing, but you would argue that Great Britain has a Christian heritage, and I don't think there's anything wrong as a Muslim to say that Great Britain is a Christian country. It's always been a Christian country, and it should remain a Christian country. I believe that. I like that they let me visit. That's fine. I would never go to the UAE and say this should be a Christian nation. I would never do that, so why do we do it the other way around? It just seems hypocritical.
But that's the point, though. That's the point what a lot of people are making. If you want to live in a place that majority is Muslim, go there. You can move there. If you want to live in a place that's got the traditions, let them stay there, right? That's the whole argument about nationalism. Like if you're proud of your country, no, you shouldn't be proud of your country.
No, but that only applies to white people. And I'm one of the champions of this, even though the hardcore racists on Twitter hate me because they call me mulatto and mixed race and all these things. I don't care. I'm going to champion for it anyway. Only white people are not allowed to love themselves, love their race, and love their countries. Everyone else is. White people are the only ones who could do it. Mm-hmm. If anyone else flies a flag or says we're from wherever, or we're this color, or we're this religion, we want it, it's fine. When white people do it, it's instantly demonized. White people are the only people who are expected to give up their lands. And it's actually quite, and I say this as a half white man, half black man, it's very obvious. It's very obvious for me to see. And the European countries, you could argue that America was founded multiracially. You could argue that. But the British people are a type of people. They're an ethnicity. They're a type of people from one place and one part of the earth. And once they lose it, they have nowhere else to go. That's all they have. And they're being replaced in real time. And their leader, Keir Starmer, is letting it happen. And if you talk about it, you go to jail. All of this is happening right now. And unless the men do something and replace him with somebody who cares, they're going to be replaced. That's the bottom line of it. I can then argue, I can move on to the point that, you know, we all get what we deserve in this life and that the strong destroy the weak. We could argue that point. I could sit here and say, well, white people, if you get replaced, you deserve it because you didn't do anything about it. I could make that argument, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. White people are being replaced in their host nations. That's obvious for me to see. I don't think anyone can argue against that point. People try.
But
people
that's also a fair argument, though.
No, it's a very fair argument, but that upsets people. Or they deny it's happening. But it is happening. White people are going extinct.
Yep.
You are going extinct. And then when you tell people this, they have lots of different answers to it. But nationalism is feared when white people band together.
Back at it again with the best app in the world, in my opinion, for networking. You know this because you use the app, Manect. But only if you know what new updates we got with Manect, which I'm announcing today, by the way. Today's Tuesday. At 3 o'clock today, I will be doing a private webinar. You can go register for it. If you haven't already, vtwebinar.com. The seats are getting filled up. Get your slot locked in today, 3 p.m. I'll give you the 3 announcements. Number 2, I'm going to give you 8 mistakes people make with networking. My whole life is a byproduct of networking and learning how to do it and learning from my mistakes. I'm going to share that with you today and give you a free PDF. And on top of that, a contest we're announcing today on how for you. Come join us at Kentucky Derby, the greatest 2 minutes in sports. At the Derby, 5th floor, biggest suite, finish line right there. Incredible experience. Join the webinar today. Again, 3 p.m. today on the webinar. Go to vtwebinar.com, register. I look forward to seeing you there. If you enjoyed this video, you want to watch more videos like this, click here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click here.